In this part of the session, I'm going to start with a relatively brief tutorial on preparing successful proposals to NSF, more specifically to the BME program. And then we're going to have a panel discussion in which a number of panelists who are department chairs, NSF reviewers, NSF awardees, and prior or current NSF directors are going to try to address questions about things to do or not to do to strengthen your applications. So let me continue with the tutorial. One of the important things to do when applying to NSF is to find the best fit for your application, the best programmatic fit. This is because each program assembles panels which have certain types of expertise. It is important for the subject matter of your application to be well aligned with the expertise of the panel that is going to review it. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the structure of National Science Foundation. It is composed of 9 directorates shown here. My program and also Alex's program is in the engineering directorate shown here. Within the engineering directorate, there are a number of divisions. Again, our program is in the Chemical, Bioengineering, Environmental, and Transport System division, abbreviated CBET. And this is the organization of CBET itself. The programs of interest to this community are clustered in this Bioengineering and Engineering Healthcare cluster. And programs in this cluster are interested either in technology advancement or in diagnostics and sensing, with communication, of course, between these two broad domains. But in both of these areas, we're interested in the development of fundamental enabling knowledge and technologies. This is how the funding for fiscal year 2015 was broken down for this Bioengineering and Engineering Healthcare cluster. You see that the majority of the funds went to the unsolicited proposal mechanism, with the career proposal mechanism being a close second. The career funding actually corresponded to 28.5% of the total, and this is a pretty high percentage. For BEH, relative to other clusters within CBET, but also other divisions within the engineering directorate. One of the reasons, but not the only one, is that this is a very active community. Universities are hiring new biomedical engineers who are applying for career awards. Consequently, we get good proposals which we're trying to fund. A couple of words about the programs in this cluster. The Biotechnology and Biochemical Engineering program has as areas of emphasis tissue engineering and stem cell technologies, quantitative systems biotechnology, metabolic and protein engineering and design, also synthetic biology, single-cell physiology and dynamics, and then development of novel molecular level and omics tools, proteomics, genomics, and so forth. The Biomedical Engineering program has as areas of emphasis molecular, cellular, and tissue approaches for advanced biomanufacturing. And here we're interested both in the biomanufacturing of cells as therapeutic agents themselves. These can be immune cells or stem cells or others. and 3D constructs composed of matrices, scaffolds, growth factors, and living cells for the purpose of having a tissue engineering or regenerative medicine application, or serving for drug screening and toxicity testing as organs on a chip and so forth. And then the other thematic area in biomedical engineering is neural engineering and human brain mapping. The biophotonics program in our cluster emphasizes novel technologies such as optogenetics, epigenetic changes associated with health and disease, and molecularly specific sensing technologies. The nano biosensing program emphasizes sensitive measurements of biomarkers and pathogens, nano biosensors for intracellular events, and novel biorecognition elements. And the General and Age-Related Disabilities Engineering program, which is directed by Alex Leonessa, here on the panel, is interested in neuroengineering rehabilitation and brain mapping. So here you see an overlap with the biomedical engineering program, and this is fine. We have that a lot at NSF. Still, there are differences, and a proposal can be better directed to one program versus the other. So in those cases, please make sure you talk to the program directors as to which one would be the better fit. Additionally, the GARDI program, as we call it, is interested in exoskeletal robotics for assistance and rehabilitation, sensory organ augmentation, and replacement. So it is important, again, to read the descriptions of these various programs to find where your proposal fits. In other words, which program would have the expertise, and assemble the panel with the appropriate expertise to review your application, and then talk to the program director before submitting. We have a variety of funding mechanisms which are listed here. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on the career award and, to a somewhat lesser extent, the unsolicited program. Although some of the comments that I will be making would be more generally applicable. But additionally, let me just mention, we fund conferences and workshops, proposals, grant opportunities for academic liaison with industry, eager applications, also these supplements that we've been talking about, the RET and the REU supplements, and then NSF, of course, is interested in bigger proposals that relate to the development of centers and other special programs. These, for instance, would be the NRT and the ERC and the EFRI programs. And for those, although some of the guidelines that I'm going to provide also apply, these are of much bigger scope, and definitely you need to talk to the respective program directors before pursuing any of these opportunities. Let me now talk a little bit about the career program, as it is a foundation-wide activity that offers NSF's most prestigious awards for faculty members beginning their independent careers. Actually, the career program began historically in the engineering directorate of NSF. And then the other directorates also subscribed to it, and now it is an NSF-wide activity. Its goal is to provide stable support at a sufficient level and duration to enable the awardees to develop careers as outstanding researchers and educators who effectively integrate teaching, learning, and discovery. And you saw some excellent examples of this, and also some hints from the awardees in the presentations earlier in this session. Awardees are selected on the basis of their plans to develop highly creative, integrative, and effective research and education careers. At NSF, we always encourage the increased participation of investigators traditionally underrepresented in science and engineering. All awards are for a 5-year duration. The minimum engineering award size is $500,000. Unfortunately, this is also the maximum, pretty much. That's important because it levels the playing field. If someone comes up with a career award, although legally they can do that, at least for the time being, which way exceeds $500,000, then the scope of this award clearly is going to be different than the scope of a $500,000 proposal. So comparison between these two becomes more difficult. So by having the budgets all be in a very narrow domain, we level the playing field and we enable a more accurate and robust review process. At least I think so. So for the biomedical engineering program, I give applicants a 1% leeway. So their budgets can be between $500,000 and $505,000, just for round-off errors and so forth. But that's it. Other programs actually have an even narrower domain. But it is important that, again, these budgets are calibrated to within a narrow domain so that the review process is better enabled. So theoretically, there is no maximum award size, but this is not in practice. And the submission window is in July. What happens if a proposal significantly exceeds this $500,000 size budget? If it is significantly exceeding this budget, then the PI will be contacted and encouraged to withdraw this proposal so that it does not count towards one of the submissions. However, they can decline to do that, and so their proposal will go into review. If it is highly recommended, well, then the program director will have to work with the PI to reduce the budget to within the domain that I indicated. You asked about the PI eligibility requirements. Here, as they are currently standing, PIs need to hold a doctoral degree as of submission date, be employed in a tenure track or equivalent position as of October 1 following submission, be employed as an assistant professor or equivalent as of October 1 following submission, have not competed more than 2 times previously in the career program, so you have 3 shots at the career program. If a proposal is withdrawn or returned without review because it is non-compliant, it does not count as a submission. So you lose this cycle, but you do not lose a strike. And of course, you have not had previously received an NSF career award, not just any award, an NSF career award, it should be said here. You can have another NSF award before applying for the career, but you cannot have a career and then apply for another career award. So before you do anything, remember that you don't have to submit a career proposal in your first year as a tenure track assistant professor. Instead, I would encourage you to wait until your central idea is crystallized to the level of creativity, novelty, and transformative potential that will excite the reviewers. Identify the correct program. Make sure your proposal fits in one of the program's emphasis areas. Read program descriptions carefully and talk to program directors. How do you talk to program directors? It varies. I personally prefer that I be given a 1-page outline where the specific aims are very clearly stated and they are as clear to the final ones as possible. And then after I have a chance to review this outline, then we follow up with a phone discussion. Ask colleagues to share their successful proposals with you so that you can see what a winning proposal looks like. Try these first. Serve as a panel reviewer, if possible. Email program directors your contact information and some key words regarding your areas of interest and expertise so that they can put you in their reviewer databases. Read the solicitation carefully and anticipate how you will respond to it. Start early. Start thinking and writing early. Project a long-term vision as a new researcher. Show how the scientific or engineering problem you propose is the start of a long-term investigation into an important area. Again, you need to convince the reviewers that with the funding that you're going to get and over the 5-year period, you will be able to establish yourself as a prominent researcher and educator in your chosen field of research, effectively, again, integrating research, education, and discovery. Demonstrate that you're an independent investigator out of the PhD and postdoc advisors' shadows. Describe how your work in the area will continue beyond the 5-year career award. It is important to read the literature very, very carefully. It is a significant weakness if a key paper in your proposed area of research is not acknowledged and cited. So you need to distinguish what you are proposing from previous work in the same area. Show that you are an independent investigator. Again, know the literature and cite all relevant papers. Put your work in context with what has been done before. Identify gaps in literature and knowledge area that this proposal addresses. This provides confidence to the reviewers that you understand what you are proposing and you also understand and can convey its significance. Preliminary data are important to help motivate the proposed work, but also to demonstrate feasibility of the proposed studies and demonstrate to the reviewers that you have the skills and tools to carry out the studies that you propose. A question that we often get is how much of preliminary data do you need for a career award? Where clearly the reviewers understand that people applying for careers are early independent investigators. So they are not looking for an abundance of preliminary data. However, they do look for a demonstration through this effective combination of preliminary data and of appropriate, articulate arguments that the proposed studies, although transformative, are still feasible, and that you have the skills, knowledge, expertise, and resources to carry out the proposed studies. For high-risk activities that may fail, please provide alternative strategies that could be tried. Do not overpromise in the project description. Everyone knows that you will fund only one graduate student with a career grant every year. So if what you propose needs 2 or 3 students to be effectively done, that's going to be identified as a weakness. Don't forget results from prior NSF support. This is actually a very common mistake that may result in your proposal be returned without review. You must describe both intellectual merit and broader impact in separate sections with headings for one grant you hold or have held in the last 5 years. So if you have one, that's the one that you describe. If you have more than one, then you describe the one that is most relevant to the current application, and you simply cite the rest. The career awardees also pointed to how important it is to have a strong educational plan and to have your research plan well integrated with your educational plan. Show how your research can be integrated into leveraged outreach activities. Show the added value you bring to existing activities, if you already have existing activities. Leverage resources on your campus for outreach. For example, getting high school students in the lab, well, yeah, or even better, going to high schools and providing demos there. Recruiting underrepresented students, working with museums, and so forth. You do not need to reinvent programs. Get letters from programs stating they will work with you and include activities in the budget. These letters of collaboration, again, they have to follow a very strict formatting guideline, because if they do not, they may be ground for return of your proposal without review. Please refer to the guidelines of how these letters of collaboration should be composed. They should have just one sentence that I'm willing to collaborate with such and such PI on such and such project, and that's about it in this context, and that's about it. One sentence. Because otherwise, these letters could be used for additional substantial information relevant to the project description, which again would make the playing field uneven. All of that project description should be in the main body of the proposal and not in the appended letters. Consult with experts in educational research about your educational plan. They can help provide background into methods you will use and how to assess outcomes of your proposed activities. This is important. It is important to have some sort of assessment metrics of your broader impact activities, so that over the course of 5 years, if something that you initiated turns out not to be very effective, an activity, educational or outreach activity, turns out not to be very effective, you can implement a corrective action and improve it. 5 years is a long period of time. So you can, after the first or second year, you can find out that something is not as effective as you thought it would be, implement a feedback loop and propose something improved for the third year of your project. Don't forget the scientific, engineering, and for BME and other programs in the cluster, also possibly translational, medical, broader impacts. Regarding proposal submission, ask colleagues to read it and take their recommendations seriously. It can help to have people not in your research area read the project summary. The project summary is important. It is probably the first thing reviewers will read, and it will set the stage and their attitude towards the rest of the proposal. So make sure you grab their attention in a positive way through the project summary. Of course, don't write it the last minute. The deadline is real, down to the second. 5 p.m. your local time, down to the second. This is important. If your proposal is declined, start planning the resubmission early. Read the reviews carefully. Was the central idea of the proposal received well? This is critical for the career award. Was the central idea received well? Was it deemed as potentially transformative and novel? Was it assessed as creative? What was the assessment of the educational outreach plan, of its integration with research? Talk to the program director before resubmitting, and do not resubmit essentially the same proposal. Let me now say a couple of things more pertinent to the unsolicited projects. Those should emphasize high impact, transformative technologies, multidisciplinary nature, integrating engineering and life sciences. They should balance theory, mathematical model, and experiment. Should advance both engineering and life sciences, integrating and advancing both disciplines. Here is the submission window, and the last paragraph shows the award size. Preliminary data for the unsolicited proposals are more critical, and they should demonstrate feasibility and that the PIs have expertise, skills, and resources to carry out the proposed work. Broader impacts, I think that was indicated also before, they can be new education outreach activities or continuation of existing successful activities, which would have to be decelerated or perhaps stopped if the PIs do not get this award. Critical for the proposal to be compliant, and then again about submission. Let me end with a couple of slides on common pitfalls which applies to both career and unsolicited proposals. Failing to integrate education outreach activities in a meaningful and sensible way to the research plan. Failing to include any assessment of educational activities. Making the proposed work too broad or too narrow. Having ambiguous, unclear descriptions in the research plan. Making selections of cells, materials, and so forth without any justification. At least when you select a particular material or cell type, provide some justification as why you picked it up. The reviewers may disagree with your selection or your justification, but at least they cannot blame you for not having thought about the alternatives. That's important. And of course, proposing an impossibly large amount of work. Repeating words without substantiating them, like innovative, novel, fundamental, without actually saying what it means in the context of the proposed studies. Failing to express a compelling scientific question and a clear, reasonable path on how to answer this question. This is important. If the proposed research is perceived as incremental, then chances are that it will not get recommended for funding. An incremental proposal would be, for example, a parametric study, where you systematically vary a parameter and you say, I'm now going to fill the squares with the outputs, without some real insight as to what this is going to produce in terms of fundamental knowledge of a transformative nature. There are no convincing preliminary data, and the educational plan is quite ordinary, like teach a class, educate students, things that you would do whether you get this award or not as a faculty member. And thank you. So I don't know if we have time for any pressing questions. Maybe we can skip that and move directly to the panel. So now let's move to the panel discussion. The panel will entertain questions from the audience on how to prepare successful proposals. And perhaps the first thing to do would be to go over the panelists and let them introduce themselves.
Okay. Thank you, Thanasis. My name is Melu Ramasubramanian. As Thanasis said, I'm here on this panel. He had 4 criteria for being on this panel. I seem to fulfill all 4 criteria as an awardee of NSF, as a reviewer of unsolicited career awards and many other proposals as a reviewer, and also prior program officer, program director at NSF for 3.5 years, and the department chair. So that's, I am at Clemson University. I have a department chair of mechanical engineering, and I have a joint appointment as faculty member in bioengineering. So my work spans this topical area.
Hello, my name is Tara Alvarez. I'm a professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at NJIT. I received my career award in 2005, and then I received another award in 2011, and I currently hold an MRI, which is a major research instrumentation grant. I'm not a department chair or program director, but I have regularly served as a reviewer for NSF. I typically review 1 to maybe 3 panels a year. The key advice, Thanasis did an excellent job. I don't have that much to add, but the key thing I would suggest when you are writing your proposals is to have them read by 2 different types of colleagues. One colleague who is in your field and understands your science, so he or she can identify whether or not your work is novel and transformative. Those words are really critical for reviewers. And then I would also give it to another colleague who is a scientist, but not directly in your field. Because as reviewers of NSF, we are going to be familiar, but not necessarily have exactly your expertise. So you need to make sure that it's written to a broad scientific audience so that we can understand what you're trying to pitch.
My name is Kai-Ming Yi. I'm the professor and also department chair of biomedical engineering at Binghamton University. And I was the program director in biomedical engineering. I'm also the awardee of a number of the NSF award. And I think, I can answer all the questions, but I think, all the tips which they already give to you is, I want to say, just want to make one comment. I think it's the most valuable resource for you to develop the career work is your department chair. Utilize more effectively, you will see the difference.
That's it?
Yes.
So my name is Alex Leonessa. I'm program director at NSF. I supervise the general and age-related disability engineering program. I'm also supervising some other program at NSF, such as the CBET-related MRI proposal, major research instrumentation, as well as the biomedical related proposal submitted to the National Robotic Initiative, and a few other things as well. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech. I'm rotating at NSF, and my expertise is in robotics and rehabilitation engineering. I did get a career award in 2011 on some application of functional electrical stimulation. As far as advice goes, I'm relatively fresh from the career award, which enough for me to remember what I went through when I submitted it, as well as having panels for the career awards about last week. So as a professor, I can tell you that the year leading to my submission to the career award, I must have served, I didn't count them, I must have been something like 10 different panels. When I was writing my proposal, I was actually kind of imagining the discussion of the panel as I was writing, like, oh, if I write this sentence, they're going to say this. If I write this other sentence, they're going to say that. I was really trying to address all of the points of intellectual merit and broader impact, advanced knowledge, being creative, novel, transformative, and so on and so forth. And I was keeping those in mind as I was writing. So keep that in mind when you write your proposal. Make sure to address all of those points. Make it easy for the reviewers to find them. Not all panelists are thorough. As much as we instruct them to be as thorough as possible, especially with career proposal, but with all proposals in general, sometimes to find some information in the proposals is difficult. It's not clearly highlighted. The key points, bold them, box them, I would say color them, but we work with PDFs a lot, but if you print them, they don't come out nice. If you use colors too much. But make sure that the information that it's relevant comes out. Make sure that it comes out how you're transformative, what is novel, your plan after the 5 years, okay? So this is about lay down the grounds for your career. What is that you have in mind? How is this proposal, how is this potential award enabling you to be successful for your entire career, possibly, right? So just think about those questions and trying to answer those questions. Talk to your program directors. I get proposals that, I don't know the PIs, they never talk to me, they never discuss what are the priorities for my program, and guess what? They do not address them. I get proposals that have no mention of any disability. In my program, that is about disability engineering, if you don't have a specific disability, that proposal could potentially be returned without review. Now, sometimes we take on ourselves, with Thanasis, to go around and shop and find another program director that could be interested. So I get a proposal that has no disabilities. I could go to Thanasis, for example, and ask him, look at this proposal. Do you think that fits your program? I'll transfer it to you. But I don't have to do that. Not all program directors do that. I mean, as soon as I find out it doesn't fit the program, I could actually just return it and call it done, and you just wasted a year. Right? Just because you didn't target the right program director. If you think that your proposal is interdisciplinary and that you are trying to decide among two different program directors, talk to them both and decide on one. Still, afterwards, contact the other one and tell him, I did submit a proposal, but I sent it to another program, but I think that you would be interested. Sometimes we co-review proposals. And actually that increases a little bit your possibilities of funding, a little bit. And just because, if we have two different program directors that fund the same proposal, they share, do 50-50, I'm more inclined to fund something using 50% of the money and still getting the merit, still putting it in my portfolio as a proposal that was funded, right? It's something worth investigating. One thing is that wait the right time. I know, because, again, I'm a professor as well, I know that your department chairs pressure you to submit as early as possible. And it's a prestigious award and so on and so forth. But you know what, if you're first or second year professor, you need to work, and it does happen, so I'm not saying that it's don't even try, because I made an award last year, you can double check, to a professor that was in the second year of a tenure. So it does happen, but you need to work really hard to show the panel that you have a clear idea of what your career is going to be. After being a professor for 2 years, you don't even know where your lab is most of the times. And so you need to be careful about that. Just wait that you are ready for it. I know that it's considered, the career award is considered very prestigious, and sometimes in many departments is a decision maker for your tenure. I want to make one thing clear. This is not NSF intention, and there is a lot of talk at NSF on how to get out of that, because NSF does not want the career proposal to be almost a requirement for your tenure. I know of departments that actually have it in writing that you're not going to get tenure if you don't have a career award, which is ridiculous, and NSF does not endorse that. It's nothing that you can do anything about. The only thing I can tell you is that, remember the pie chart that Thanasis showed you earlier? Unsolicited proposal was about ballpark 50% of our funding, in CBET at least. Unsolicited, 50%. Career, roughly a quarter. Right? So unsolicited get double the money than career. We have about 10 times as many unsolicited proposals as career, roughly. So which one do you think, and let's do some math there, which one do you think has best success rate? A quarter of funding, half of the funding, 1/10 of the proposals submitted for career. Right? So we are going around with a career with a success rate in the 15% range, sometimes a little bit above that. Unsolicited, sometimes is in the single-digit success rate. Sometimes, it depends from the program. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that getting an unsolicited proposal is actually more difficult than getting a career proposal in terms of success rate. Still, the career is more prestigious. Right? So that, it's a prestigious award, I'm not saying that, but to make that a decision factor for your tenure, I think it's unfair. NSF thinks that is unfair. So again, I'm not saying to go around and start yelling at your chair, but just something to keep in mind when you make your considerations, which program you want to submit. Do you think you're ready for it or not?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's open the floor for questions. When you approach the microphone, please introduce yourself. And if you would like to ask a particular panelist your question, please address it to her or him. Otherwise, address it to the entire panel, and then we'll figure it out who answers it.
I received one of the NSF-funded travel awards, the East Asia and Pacific Summer Institutes. And I think on that one, the recipient is considered the PI of the award. How does that factor in terms of reporting previous awards and previous awards in regards to submitting the application?
That's a good question. To be on the absolute safe side, I would report it and the results from previous NSF award, maybe even as 2 or 3 lines in your project description in the relevant section, just to be on the safe side.
And then
Any
if
other
there's
suggestions?
Yeah, no, I mean, so for the reporting prior awards, prior funding, right now the guidelines are pretty clear and thorough, excessively so if you ask me, but you need to report the title of the proposal, the award number, the amount, and then in separate headlines, broader impact and intellectual merit of that particular award. Now, even if you write 2 words, but you report all of that information, better safe than sorry.
What about awards that may have been done as part of a postdoc where you're listed as key personnel but not a co-investigator or a principal investigator?
Okay, let's put it this way. If you go on FastLane, okay, and you see listed there as in the list of awards that you have received, you should put in your prior award. If it is within 5 years, and there are several guidelines for that as well, right? But if you log in into FastLane and you see listed, report it.
Okay, that makes things easy then. Thank you very much.
Could someone say a little bit about the Rapid and Eager awards? It's very unclear to me what you have to do, what kind of connection you have to have, and before you would be eligible to receive those kind of awards.
Would you like to pick one and
Sure.
I'll pick the other?
Okay, so the rapid first of all, usually there is, not all the times, but there is a DCL, a Dear Colleague letter, so there is a request from NSF for proposal in an area that is critical. Example, about a year ago, we had a Dear Colleague letter asking for proposal addressing Ebola virus. Ways to detect, prevent, blah, blah, and so on and so on. So usually. Now, sometimes there are some particular events that you know of, but they're not so broadly known to the audience to actually generate, an NSF reaction. So in that case, you contact the program director and you can tell him, behind my house, I got this oil spill and I need to go and sample it now before that goes away. It's in the local newspaper, you can talk to the program director and the program director decides, yes, you need to do it, you need to do it now. So, but rapid, the idea of the rapid is that something that it's of critical need now. So the volcano that erupts, the West Virginia oil spill that was last year, or the Ebola virus. As far as Zika goes,
Right, but would the Ebola virus type of thing fall within the biomedical engineering program?
yes, the leader.
I'm just trying to think of more specific to I guess, this
There
field.
were 2 types of proposals that we received in our cluster in response to the Ebola Rapid. One was about improved detection mechanisms of the virus. So that would fall primarily under the nanobiosensing program. And the second type of proposal was some bioseparation approaches for the excessive levels of cytokines which are present in the blood of infected individuals, which accelerate the deterioration of the diseased people towards eventually, possibly death. And so we entertained also proposals, and we funded one of them, on developing some novel methods to remove the excess levels of cytokines, inflammatory cytokines, from the blood of affected individuals.
And the eager?
As far as the eager, there are specific guidelines on the grants proposal guide that you need to follow for the eager. Key point is that you contact the program director. So that's something that you guys need to get in your head for career, for unsolicited, for rapid, and for eager. Talk to your program director. So you have an idea, you think that is extremely risky, but potentially high impact. So you come to me and you say, Alex, I think I found the cure for diabetes. Most likely it's not going to work, but there is a chance it's going to work for this and this reason. I like to give it a try, at least to see if I'm on the right track. Can you give me a couple of $100,000 for the next 3 years, so that for the next 2 years, so that I can look at it and decide if it's worth pursuing any further?
But
Right.
that does not require previous NSF funding.
Say again?
You don't have to have previous NSF funding. in order
No,
to
it's
be-
not related to previous NSF funding. So you understand what I say when I say high risk, high impact, right? And so if that's the case, you submit a proposal to the program director. The program director decides by, internal review only. I mean, he can be the only one, he can bounce it off other people, but I mean, it doesn't go to a panel usually, unless, otherwise decided by the program director. But, and those are the general thing. It's up to 2 years, 300K top, or the other way around. I remember it's 3 years,
No,
200K,
no.
or 2 years, 300K. Which one is
2
it?
years, 300K.
2 years,
maximum.
300K top.
Thanks.
And yeah.
It's an interesting mechanism. The only thing that I would like to add to what Alex said, which is exactly correct, but the only thing that I would like to add is that usually these potentially very transformative ideas, which are also high risk, that come to our attention as possibilities for eagers, usually they do not have sufficient preliminary data. That's another issue. That is, it is something that may be highly impactful, but the PI does not have preliminary data to take it through the regular proposal mechanism. And in that case, the eager mechanism can provide support at the level and over a shorter period of time for the PI to demonstrate that this either is as promising as it could be or it's not. And in that case, we take the loss. But if it is very promising, then some very good things can come out of it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Zichun from Dartmouth. I have a question about, so you talk about having a proposal concurrently reviewed by 2 programs at NSF. So my question is, if the research topic can potentially fit both NSF and NIH, how does that work? So can I submit of course the formats are different, but the same idea, can it be concurrently submitted to NSF and NIH?
So
Yes, it can. Although keep in mind that proposals submitted to NSF should have a significantly different flavor than proposals submitted to NIH. Right. Proposals to NSF should have as their main objective the generation of fundamental knowledge and perhaps also core enabling technologies. Proposals to NIH should have a more translational clinical application perspective, and that should be evident in the evolution of the project through the specific aims. You can submit to both agencies, however, the same idea, but you have to disclose that under current and pending support, so that if both proposals are funded or recommended for funding, then adjustments will have to be made so that it is very illegal, to receive funding from 2 separate agencies for the same work. So adjustments will have to be made if both are recommended for funding, so that you do not receive funding from more than one agency for the same work.
Okay.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, there is a handful of programs, really just a few, which include that I can think of right now, the National Robotic Initiative and the Smart and Connected Health, but actually NIH program manager come to our panels and they listen to the discussion, and then if there is a proposal that is being discussed by the panel, a proposal submitted to NSF, which is of interest to them, they actually contact the program director and tell the program director, you know, don't worry about that one, I will fund it. And so what we do at that point at NSF, we actually decline that proposal under the reason that has been funded elsewhere, and then at that point NIH will contact you and ask you for a revised budget following NIH guidelines, and NIH will do the funding. So in other words, what happens for those kind of programs that you submit to NSF, will do the review within NSF, but really the proposal is being considered by NIH at the same time.
I see. So that actually happened.
Say again?
So those cases were actually happened. I mean, have happened before.
Has it happened before?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's pretty regular. I mean, with the NRI and the SCH, the Smart and Connected Health, it is part of the procedure.
Okay. So would there be cases where a proposal would be like cost shared by NSF and NIH?
No, it's to share funding among different federal agencies, not as trivial as it sounds. I thought that I could do it, and in the last year I failed. Then I don't know if I'm going to keep trying it, because it just let me the head against the wall and it hurts already. So it's usually what they do. NIH says that they like it and they take it, and we let them because they got more money.
Yeah, I think one of the previous presenters this afternoon talked about an NSF/NIH funding mechanism.
Well, I'm not aware of any proposal that is co-funded. I mean, it could be, I don't know about it.
Well, in the context of what you said, that there are panels which are attended by NIH officers, and then they can pick up a proposal. So the program itself is co-funded. And there is another possibility where proposals are being, there is another program in the area of multi-scale modeling where proposals are being reviewed by NIH, and then NSF, if a certain program at NSF is interested in a particular aspect of a proposal and wants to co-fund, they will transfer that money to NIH, not to the PI directly, but to NIH, and then NIH will do the entire funding.
Okay.
But if I can just add to it, and when you see this NSF/and NIH, that's basically joint program and funding program developed between two agencies, NSF and NIH. That's, for example, in the past, there is a Pitfalls program. That's basically is funding the physics interface between the physics and the life science, and more leaning toward the tumor. And that's basically co-funded by both NIH and NSF and reviewed by both panels. And panel assembled by both NIH and NSF. So the funding, basically the money used to fund the projects and contributed by two agencies. So that's probably what you see on, during the presentation, the list of that such a program. So just want to add to it.
So the program is co-funded, not
Yes,
a particular project.
Yeah. Yes.
The money for a particular project will come only from one agency or another.
I see. Thanks a lot.
Those are very rare programs. No, those are very rare programs. Don't count on that. I mean, it's, especially for the career. The career is an NSF theme period.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks a lot.
I just want to add one point in which you bring out about the NSF and NIH. And more often, you need to be very careful in the past, which we see, and even during the review process. And because NIH proposed 12 pages, NSF is 15 pages. And you basically just add 3 pages of broad impact and then recycle the NIH proposal and submit to the NSF. That's basically disastrous. And the reviewers can figure out it very quickly. And you think you can recycle very quickly, just add 3 pages broad impact, become NSF proposal. Don't do it. Okay, don't do it.
So what changes would you suggest?
But you have to just, as Sanesis mentioned about, you have to significantly, tell, revise, and modify your proposals more fit into NSF mission. Because NSF, what is a funder, is a fundamental study, it's discovery level study, and that's basically the key, the core and of the NSF and principle for funding any on the frontier works. That's NIH is more translational. Okay, so that's, you have to keep in that mind.
Right. Thanks.
Two questions. Hello. What is the process to get copies of award-winning proposals? Or is there any process?
So the best thing to do is that if you know of an award that has been made, then you can search for awards. You contact the PI and you ask the PI directly, because he can share his, if you decide to do so, he can share the proposal with you. The proposal that we receive are confidential and cannot be shared. And some PIs are willing to share their proposal. The best thing to do is actually to go within your university, I mean, it's, so you can look for awards, look for your colleagues, and you ask them if you can have a look at their winning proposal to see how it was structured. But
There's a different perspective.
There is a legal process
Right.
called Freedom of Information Act. So you can write to, I forget the name of the person at NSF, there's an office you can write to and request a proposal. And they will actually ask the PI. So as Alex says, the best thing is to, because they will know who is asking for the proposal. So it's best to get the proposal from the PI if they would share it. If not, you can actually ask the NSF to use the Freedom of Information Act. And they will send you they will first ask for the PI to redact any confidential information. It's a long time, it's a long process. Then eventually you will get only the technical part, not the budget, not the PI CV and all those kinds of, just the technical part is something that you can get. That's the Freedom of Information Act. If you go to the website, you'll be able to find it. But it's the preferred way is to contact the PI and get that. This is a much more of a legal process.
Okay.
And if you're new to your university, I would suggest you go to your sponsored research program or your dean's office, because they're going to know people that are applying for these grants who are even outside your department. So you can cast a broader net within your own university. And I, for one, do make my proposals available to anybody within my university.
And my second question is about how can you become a panel reviewer? Like,
You email the program director.
yeah, you need to talk to your program director. Did I mention that earlier? You need to talk to your program director?
Now you're talking to program director.
Right. So you ask, and the program director is going to put your name into a database, and then together with your expertise, and then when needed, if needed, they'll call you.
okay. Thank you.
Hi, Steve Florzik, University of Central Florida. I'm a brand new professor, and I was wondering if I can leverage any of the research I did during my PhD or postdoc work for preliminary data, or if that has to occur in my own lab, particularly for the career proposal.
Well, I'll take a first cut at it, but feel free to chip in, primarily from the reviewer's perspective, because it's up to the reviewer. It's a balancing act, and that's why it's called the art of proposal writing. So, in principle, you can do this. However, in doing so, you should also convince the panel that this only serves as background information, and your trajectory is one towards independent research away from the shadows of your postdoctoral mentor or your graduate mentor.
That's exactly right. I mean, there is, you can cite your PhD work and publications as one part of the literature where you got the knowledge and ideas from, but then what you're proposing should not be a simple extension of the idea. Then that goes back to what Tanessa showed, that there'll be shadow of doubt on the idea whether you're leaving the shadows of your major advisor or not. So you're walking the very fine line by pushing too far in the same idea.
And for my own career proposal, I wanted to develop a new skill, which was outside my PhD and postdoc work. So I found a collaborator who was willing to work with me. He and I did some preliminary experiments, so we did have data. I was able to present it at a conference, so it was outside what I had done previously, but that's where I felt my career, I wanted it to go. That eventually led to an NIH R01 grant, so thank you for that foundation. But if you can imagine, you're trying to build your career. Where do you want to be 10 years, 20 years from now, and what skills do you need to get there? And how can you add that skill in order to answer a question in science, and that you have thought of hypotheses, but you need a particular skill set in order to get that science done?
And to follow up on that, that goes together with what I told you earlier. You don't have to submit your career proposal immediately. Wait 2-3 years, and during that time, it's actually an opportunity to understand in which direction you want to go. Get a couple of publications out so that when you submit your proposal, you are qualified in an area that perhaps you haven't published much before. If you go in a slightly different direction. And so that you come across as competent to submit a proposal in that area towards developing a new career.
I just want to add on a couple of points. And from the review perspective, and when we look at such proposals, the first question in mind and basically asking whether he could be the successful independent research, because all the career world, and this is should be your first or could be your first on NSF proposal. We want to make this judgment. And if you just simply extension in the work you propose, just simply extension your postdoc work, that would not help you to demonstrate, would not help you to show, to convince the reviewer, and you will be the successful independent researcher. And I think, give you the tips. And most likely, they're looking at your CV very carefully, looking at publication to judge whether there's at least 1 or 2 papers you list you as a senior authors, and you have the graduate students working with you together publish papers. And that's basically one way to show, and you could be the very successful on the independent research. That's keeping that in mind, and when you do, so it's very, I think in many times it's very critical, particularly for career award, and review view that very, very heavily.
Thank you.
Do you want us to take a minute to explain what happens on the review side?
I think that would be a great idea.
Okay. Do you want me to start with that?
Please.
Okay. So I have been asked to serve on many panels, and I predominantly say yes because it's a great opportunity. People reviewed my proposals, so to me that's a nice way to pay it forward, okay? So if you are asked, it is a lot of work, but it's very important to science, so I strongly recommend that you do participate in panels. Typically what happens is I'll receive an email from one of the program officers, and it'll be a list. First of all, they'll find out if you have a proposal being reviewed, and if you do, you obviously cannot review. Then they'll give you a list of titles. So be aware that your title is very important because that's going to help assign reviewers to your proposal. So make sure your title very accurately represents what you're trying to do. Then the reviewers are going to write down how comfortable they feel reviewing a proposal. They might say that they feel they have a strong expertise, they are moderately comfortable reviewing it, or they're not comfortable, meaning they do not have an expertise in that area. Then we are assigned proposals, and we get somewhere between maybe 7 to 10 proposals to review. And with that comes a assignment where you're going to be the lead reviewer on typically 2 to 3, a secondary reviewer, or the third, a tertiary reviewer. Depending on the program officer, many times the third reviewer is actually the scribe. So when you get your reviews, you're going to get 3 individual panel summaries as well as 3 individual reviewer summaries as well as a panel summary. And the panel summary is the discussion.
where based on what I've seen, the career reviewers are much more in-depth. So the reviewers are truly trying to help the applicants try to make stronger proposals. So do take them to heart and really try to understand what it is that's being asked. You want to add to that?
If I write a proposal and I don't get funded, I first go to the panel summary first, because that the individual reviews are written by people, by reviewers in their own time without any discussion. And during the panel discussion is when you learn from someone else that you missed something, or you overemphasized on something you shouldn't, etc. So that discussion sort of normalizes these extreme points of view if you had. And that is technically what's captured in the dynamics of the panel is what's captured in the panel summary. So I look at that first, and then go back and read the most critical one of all, the lowest of the ratings, and then move up to see, start to identify where I can proceed. So essentially, the panel summary is a very, very important document that I recommend focusing on with every grant that you submit.
I just added several points, and if you look at as Tara mentioned about, and usually you assign the 3 reviewers, and very much and very often the primary reviewers know the subject very well. A secondary review may know subject in some degree, and most time the third review probably may have some general idea, may not actually the expert in the field. Keeping that in mind, and when you develop your proposals, that means require your proposal written in the way you can get an expert in the field excited. And you also need to make somebody who is not in the field understand what you want to present and what you want to work on. And that's basically the balance, the trade-off. And we saw this, some proposers, very excellent, has a good idea, good, very solid science, but they present in a way disconnected, and they basically make the proposal very hard to track, which we call hard to track, hard to understand. So you have that, you think as a reviewer is all in the field. No, and more often, you may have 1 or 2 reviewers looking your paper who are not in your field. So you have to keep this in mind, and this is basically many times, and particularly for somebody to start write proposals, that's the mistake. And at least I made this mistake when I start to my assistant professor, and my first NIH grant, and I wrote in a way, basically use a lot of their acronym and use a lot of terminology, very specified. And I got comments back. At that time, that's the R1 still 25 pages. And I got a comment as, I wrote a 25 pages. I received the comments as about 35 pages. and this is all the comments, just pick up all these comments asking me, what does this mean? What does this represent? So this is the lesson I learned in a very hard way, and I think you need to keep in mind.
Maybe following up on earlier comment that work with your department chair closely, I think Kai-Ming said that. I would like to offer my perspective on what I do with career proposals when the faculty member is applying for career proposals. First of all, I take it extremely seriously because it's a very important aspect of the evaluation of the proposal is the evidence for institution support through the one and only letter, which is the department chair's letter. So that's why Kai-Ming is saying that it's very important. The kinds of things, and of course your department chair should be used to regularly writing these letters. So it's not that you have to look over their shoulder, but I can just share with you what I include as a department chair so to give you an idea, and yours may do even better. So things that I talk about, what do I mean by support for this faculty member? So we hired this faculty member to work in this research area, and I would tie that to our strategic direction for the department and the university. So they really fit on an important area. That's why they're here. So I kind of bring that. Then in terms of support, I talk about, for example, they have a startup package. So I mentioned how much money that is and what kind of facilities. Reduce teaching load. If I offer it to a faculty member, I show that is all of these things that enable this faculty member to succeed. Space, I put the square footage, the facilities in the lab that we had to upfit for this faculty member to be successful. Light committee work. And also, very important, I talk about a mentorship plan where we have a teaching mentor, expert teachers in the department who've been taught 30 years in the department, is willing to mentor this faculty member, officially assigned, and a research mentor who is successful in getting grants. Both these people are helping this junior faculty. With all of these, we establish, and also basically say something about my understanding of the research area, research topic that this particular faculty member is proposing, and I strongly support it. Most important thing is there is a technical legal line I have to write is I certify that this faculty member is eligible for a career proposal submission. It's my responsibility to assure NSF that the faculty member is eligible. As far as the broader impact activities are concerned, I think there was several discussion on this. I read the proposal, of course I read the proposal closely, and my recommendation too is look at what's ongoing large-scale university-level support for STEM and activities and so on. We have several programs where there's a team of staff that goes to different counties and work with underrepresented minorities and projects, and these faculty join that big group. So there is this infrastructure set up, and the faculty member can actually pursue what they want to bring to this group, etc. So those kinds of things that I put in a 2-page letter. And I ask the faculty member to review it to be sure that this is, does the faculty member, he or she, feel that this is exactly what is the support. And if there's anything else that I need to know, I ask. It's an interactive process. I ask to give me the input, and we finalize a letter and sign and send. So I thought I might just throw this out to you. I'm sure your department chair does a similar process. If not, this is the kind of thing I do personally.
Very good.
And that letter is very important to the reviewers. And although the reviewers do not analyze your budget, make sure, at least my opinion, is that your budget reflects the missions of NSF. So for example, if you don't have any students whatsoever, no graduate, no postdoc, no funding or any resources for any type of student support, then the reviewers are going to question how serious you are about broader impact and how serious you are about training the next generation of scientists and engineers.
I have a flight at 6:30, so I'm leaving now. If you guys have any other question for me, feel free to send me an email or drop me a call, and I'm more than willing to spend all the time you need, to talk to you, but not right now.
Talk to your program officer.
Yes.
Any last burning questions? Thank you. We've got 2 minutes before the end of this, the official end of this session.
So I just give you one tips. When you write in broad impact, include those on undergraduate training, and particularly involve this, if you involve the training, the high school teachers, you look at a budget, and even, Sanesis mentioned about they increased the budget to $500,000, but that's included indirect cost. Many times you enter into the dilemma, there's no funding, and there's no budget can be actually allocated to support undergraduate students because the budget is just not there. And I think, Sanesis can talk more, but many times I give you the tips, and you can do, it's basically you can code and submit and code request for IEU at the same time when you submit the proposal. Am I correct?
Yeah, although this can also be done from a more safe standpoint after they get notification. Then they can almost immediately submit a supplement.
Yeah.
And the success rate for these supplements, provided they follow the guidelines that we provide, is close to 100%.
You want to do the microphone, so. Yeah. So that will help you to make the budget, it's workable.
Sorry, I know we're running low on time. I was just wondering, do you advise against including undergraduate support inside the main proposal because you can get that follow-up money?
It's up to you. I don't think it makes a huge difference either way. If you do not include any undergraduate support, you might want to indicate that should this proposal be funded, I intend to pursue REU supplements. Or you can indicate REU support in the proposal, and then if you get it awarded, you can very easily rebudget. This can be done internally. You do not need to contact NSF. It can be done internally by your Office of Sponsored Programs. Move that support to graduate students and apply for REU.
Okay.
So, there is flexibility.
Thank you.
Okay, let's take one last question.
Quick follow-up question. So what is the typical size of a follow-up REU grant?
It varies by program. For the biomedical engineering program, we support, the REU supplements are up to $6,000 per year for up to 2 students per year for a proposal. So up to $12K total per year as a supplement. And that's good for only 1 year. You need to reapply the 2nd year or the 3rd year if you want REU support again. Okay. It is not a multiple year award. It has to be, you have to reapply on an annual basis.
Okay.
Just quickly add one point. If you have to utilize, that's one of the reasons which I mentioned about you need to work with your department chair. You, more often, you need to utilize your university existing resource. Many universities has existing undergraduate training program already in place. You can integrate those your activity into that program, maximize the resource university already offer, and that basically will significantly improve the success and improve the chance for you to convince the reviewer, and this is a viable plan, and the plan you developed will be lead to the very success, lead to a success.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, I think we need to bring this session to a formal close. But before we do that, please help me give a round of applause to the wonderful panelists today who helped us run this session. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and best of luck to you and with your research.